Now, this Monday night continues with Advice Shop.
Hello. This week we're looking at how the bitterness and distress of a divorce can be reduced, for everyone's sake. But first, let's hear from two people who've been through the pain of divorce. George Duvio from London, who now sees his children every other weekend, and Christine Scullion from Swansea, who's bringing up her two children alone.
In some ways, I have a better relationship now with Alex than I did when we were married.
See you later.
Oh,
Bye. Bye.
The children are used to seeing him regularly, and I think they've got a good relationship with their father, and probably just as good as many fathers who live at home.
Pardon? My name is George Duvio. I've been divorced for 2 years now. I've got 2 young children from this marriage. A boy, age 11, and a girl who today is 8. Oh, you've got to pay £50 to come out of jail. To the bank. To the bank. In truth, I could have coped with bereavement of my 2 children far better than I can with this. To go to court and for some idiosyncratic judge on a pure whim to tell you that you are no longer involved in those children's lives. You can see them for less than 50 hours in a month. I mean, irrespective of what any judge wants to say, those children are mine. I know they're mine, and they know they belong to me and are part of me. And we want contact with each other. In truth, I feel more bitter towards the legal system and its perverse form of justice than I do against my ex-wife. When you go through the courts and you've got a solicitor who really hypes up the anger, the aggressiveness, beyond all reasonable bounds, it does no good at the end of the day when all the issues have been through the courts and the solicitors had a bill settled. You've got 2 people who find it very, very difficult to even stay in the same room together, let alone do anything productive for the children's ongoing future and well-being.
I divorced Alex on the grounds of adultery and insisted on naming the other woman, although Alex was really annoyed about this and this increased the hostility between us. But I thought she'd caused me enough heartache and grief and hassle, and I was justified in naming her. Also, by naming someone and divorcing Alex for adultery, the divorce would go through quicker. Whereas if we just agreed on, mutual divorce, it would take at least 2 years, if not 5, if we didn't agree to it. And I wanted to get the matter completed as soon as possible. I explained to the children, although they were only 3 and 5 at the time, that Daddy and I didn't love each other anymore, but that we still loved them, and that there was nothing to do with them that we'd split up. I think the children are happier living alone here with me than they would have been if we'd stayed together for the sake of the children, and we're still having scenes and having a really bad atmosphere between us.
I would like to say to Lord Mackay that, particularly where children are involved, we need a non-adversarial system to take marriages apart. We need a system that's going to get people involved to look at the family and the long-term effects of the family and to come to compromise to deal with these issues. So at the end of the day, the children are always going to be the victims of a marital split. I want 2 children who, having divorced parents, come out as good, well-balanced people at the end of the day, who will in their own lives in the future be able to pick up relationships.
On the 31st of October, the Law Commission presented this white paper to Lord Mackay, the Lord Chancellor. It contains their recommendations for changes to the existing divorce law, and it's called the Ground for Divorce. Now, its most important and radical recommendation is to remove the concept of fault. In other words, the need to prove adultery or unreasonable behaviour, or to have been separated for at least 2 years, would be replaced by a single ground for divorce, that the marriage has irretrievably broken down. A divorce order, however, could only be granted after a 12-month period of consideration and reflection. During this period, they would be expected to think about and, where possible, make all the practical arrangements for the care of their children and their future lives apart. And during the 12-month period of reflection, the report recommends that couples who want to do so should be encouraged to seek help from counselling and conciliation to help them resolve any disputed issues as amicably as possible. Well, with me is Professor Hoggett from the Law Commission and the chief architect of the report. Professor Hoggett, we heard George in the film say that what he wanted from your report was a non-adversarial system to take marriages apart for the sake of the children. Was that your main objective too?
Well, we certainly had a lot of evidence from people who felt like George, who felt that the present system made matters worse, not better, that it forced people to make allegations against one another or to separate for a long time in order to get their divorce, and therefore made things not only worse for them, but also worse for their children. And we were looking for a way of reducing that bitterness.
Now, the Law Commission also proposed that the sole ground for divorce should be irretrievable breakdown. Why did you see perhaps the need to get rid of the need to prove adultery or unreasonable behaviour, or for couples to be separated for 2 years?
Because that law forces a couple, whether they want to or not, either to make allegations against one another or to separate for really quite a long time before they can get a divorce. And that seems to increase the feelings of bitterness and hostility and increase the feelings of injustice, because it doesn't necessarily reflect the truth of the matter as to which of them was or was not to blame for the breakdown of the marriage.
But in our film, Christine's husband, who committed adultery, she said she wasn't to blame, it wasn't her fault. Now, if you remove the concept of innocent or guilty party, a lot of the Christines of this world are going to feel a bit aggrieved.
Well, whatever the facts of any particular case, the experience over generations now has been that however hard the law tries to find out exactly what went wrong with a marriage, who was to blame and who was not to blame, it cannot do it completely accurately. There are so many different marriages, everybody's perceptions and behaviour are different, and all you end up doing is spending a lot of money on lawyers and a lot of emotional pain and grief and bitterness, and it doesn't help anybody and it doesn't save the marriage.
Now, in your report, you put a great emphasis on the importance of couples who want to seek conciliation. Why is that so important?
Because these days we understand that it's much better if couples can agree their own arrangements between themselves rather than having to have them decided by a court. Often, of course, they can do so with their own solicitors. Sometimes they need to have them decided by a court, and that's what courts are for. But for some couples, it's much better if, with the help of a neutral mediator, they can settle down and make those arrangements all by themselves.
Professor Hoggett, thank you very much indeed. Well, we've talked about conciliation and the importance that the Law Commission attaches to couples making satisfactory arrangements for their children and themselves before a divorce is granted. But what exactly is conciliation, and how does it work? Well, rather than talk about it anymore, we thought we'd show you instead. Marion Roberts and Harold Hall are conciliators from the National Family Conciliation Council. John and Anne Davis are a fictional couple, played by